New York City, 1951. A city that never sleeps, a place where dreams are made and broken, where the past and future collide in a cacophony of sights and sounds. A bustling metropolis, a crossroads of humanity, and the stage for an enigma that continues to baffle and intrigue. The streets are alive with the hustle and bustle of everyday life, people moving with purpose, unaware of the extraordinary event about to unfold. Picture this. The heart of Times Square, traffic roaring, lights flashing, the iconic billboards casting a neon glow over the sea of faces, each one a story in itself. The energy is palpable, a living, breathing entity that envelops everyone within its grasp. Then a man appears, seemingly out of thin air. He materializes in the midst of the chaos, an anachronism that defies explanation. His sudden presence is like a ripple in the fabric of time, a moment that will be etched into the annals of mystery. He is disoriented, confused, his clothes archaic, his eyes wide with terror. His appearance is jarring, a stark contrast to the modernity that surrounds him. He looks around, trying to make sense of the world he has found himself in, a world that is both familiar and alien. This is the story of Rudolph Fentz, the man who vanished into time. A man whose existence has become a legend, a tale told in hushed tones, a mystery that has captivated the imagination of many. The man was unlike anyone else in the teeming crowds of Times Square. His presence was an enigma, a puzzle that defied logic. He stood out, not just because of his attire, but because of the aura of mystery that surrounded him. His attire, a meticulous ensemble of a frock coat, top hat, and meticulously groomed sideburns, seemed to belong to a different era. Every detail of his clothing spoke of a time long past, a time that had no place in the modern world of 1951. He clutched a vintage pocket watch, its hands frozen at a time that seemed impossible. The watch was a relic, a piece of history that had somehow found its way into the present. It was as if time itself had stopped for this man, leaving him stranded in a world he could not comprehend. Witnesses reported a look of utter bewilderment on his face, a man lost in a world he no longer recognized. His eyes darted from one sight to another, each one more confounding than the last. He was a man out of time, a relic of the past thrust into the present. He spoke, but his words made no sense, a dialect that seemed foreign to the ears of the bewildered onlookers. His speech was a jumble of archaic phrases and unfamiliar terms, a language that had no place in the modern world. The people around him could only stare in confusion, unable to understand the man or his plight. His confusion grew, his panic rising with each passing moment as he struggled to comprehend the sights and sounds of this unfamiliar world. The noise, the lights, the sheer volume of people, it was all too much for him. He was a man adrift, lost in a sea of modernity. He darted through the crowd, a phantom from the past, desperately seeking solace in a present that felt alien. His movements were frantic, his desperation palpable. He was a man out of time, a ghost from another era, searching for a way back to the world he knew. The man who would soon be known as Rudolph Fentz carried with him a collection of items as out of place as his presence in 1951. His sudden appearance in the bustling streets of New York City was nothing short of bewildering. Clad in attire that seemed to belong to a different century, he stood out like a relic from a forgotten past. His clothes, meticulously tailored yet unmistakably antiquated, drew the attention of passers-by who couldn't help but stare in curiosity and confusion. His pockets held artifacts from a forgotten time, a vintage matchbox from a saloon no one had heard of. Its logo faded but still legible. This matchbox, a small yet significant piece of history, hinted at a place that had long since vanished from the collective memory. It was as if he had stepped out of a time machine, bringing with him these remnants of a bygone era. A bill of sale for a livery stable that no longer existed, written in elegant cursive on yellowed paper. This document, bearing the marks of age, spoke of transactions and lives that had played out in a world far removed from the present. It was a tangible connection to a past that seemed almost mythical in its distance, and a letter dated June 12, 1876. The letter, penned in a flowing hand, told a story of personal correspondence, of relationships and events that had long since faded into history. It was a snapshot of a moment in time, preserved against all odds. Each item was meticulously preserved as if untouched by the passage of time, a tangible echo of a bygone era. The care with which these items had been kept suggested a deep reverence for the past, a desire to hold on to memories and moments that might otherwise be lost. The most intriguing item was a copper token for a beer, its edges worn smooth with age, bearing the name of a brewery known only to local historians. This token, a small piece of metal, carried with it the weight of countless stories and experiences. It was a relic that spoke of social gatherings, of laughter and camaraderie in a time long past. There was also a receipt for the care of a horse and carriage, issued by a stable on Lexington Avenue that had vanished decades earlier. This receipt, a simple piece of paper, was a testament to the everyday lives of people who had once walked the same streets, their routines and needs now a distant memory. These were not props, not replicas, but genuine relics from a time long past. Each item carried with it a story, a fragment of history that had somehow found its way into the present. They were pieces of a larger puzzle, each one adding depth and texture to the mystery of Rudolph Fentz. The incongruity of these items in the year 1951 was staggering. In a world that was rapidly modernizing, these artifacts stood as stark reminders of a different time, a different pace of life. They were anachronisms, out of place yet undeniably real. Each object was a piece of a puzzle, hinting at a life lived in a time vastly different from the one into which Fentz had stumbled. They suggested a narrative that was both fascinating and perplexing, a story that begged to be unravelled. Who was this man, and how did he come to possess these tangible links to the past? The mystery of Rudolph Fentz was one that captivated the imagination, raising questions about time, history, and the nature of reality itself. As people pondered his origins, they couldn't help but wonder if perhaps, just perhaps, the past was not as distant as it seemed. As quickly as he had appeared, Rudolph Fentz vanished. One moment he was there, a figure of utter bewilderment amidst the cacophony of Times Square. The next he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. The police were called, witnesses interviewed, but the trail ran cold. The man in the antiquated attire became a ghost story, a tale whispered in hushed tones. Some dismissed it as a hoax, an elaborate prank orchestrated for notoriety. Others clung to the image of the bewildered man, his eyes reflecting genuine terror and confusion. Theories ranged from mental disorientation to a meticulously planned disappearance. The mystery deepened with every passing day, the lack of answers fueling speculation and intrigue. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The case of the bewildered man in Times Square faded from public memory, relegated to the dusty archives of unsolved mysteries. But for those who had witnessed the strange spectacle firsthand, the memory lingered. They couldn't shake the feeling that they had witnessed something truly extraordinary, a glitch in the fabric of reality itself. Years later, the enigma of Rudolph Fentz resurfaced, thanks to the relentless curiosity of one man, Captain George Murphy. Murphy was not just any investigator. He was a man driven by an insatiable thirst for the unknown, a passion that had led him to solve numerous cold cases and mysteries that others had long given up on. An avid follower of unexplained phenomena, Murphy stumbled upon the Fentz case while researching another disappearance. His interest was piqued by the bizarre nature of the case, a man seemingly out of time, appearing in the bustling streets of New York City with items that belonged to a bygone era. Intrigued, he began his investigative journey, a quest for truth that would lead him deep into the annals of New York City's history. Murphy's journey was not just about solving a mystery, it was about understanding the very fabric of time and reality. He delved into old maps, tracing the evolution of the city, trying to find any clue that could explain Fentz's sudden appearance. Murphy meticulously examined the scant evidence, poring over police reports, witness testimonies, and the peculiar artifacts found on Fentz. Each piece of evidence was a puzzle piece, and Murphy was determined to see the whole picture. He spent countless hours in dimly lit rooms, surrounded by the musty smell of old paper, piecing together the fragments of Fence's life. He meticulously tracked each lead, each whisper of a clue, determined to unravel the truth behind the man who vanished into time. Murphy's dedication was unwavering. He followed every lead, no matter how small or insignificant it seemed. He interviewed old witnesses, some of whom were reluctant to revisit the past, and he scoured through archives that hadn't been touched in decades. His investigation led him to the New York City archives, where he unearthed a missing person report filed in 1876. This report was a breakthrough, a tangible connection to the past. It described a man who had vanished without a trace, a man whose description eerily matched that of the mysterious figure who appeared in Times Square. The missing person report described a man named Rudolph Fence, who had vanished without a trace at the age of 29. The details were uncanny. Fence had been a young man full of life, with a future ahead of him, only to disappear one day, leaving behind a trail of questions and no answers. His description matched the appearance of the man in Times Square, right down to the distinctive sideburns. This was no coincidence. The resemblance was too striking to ignore. Murphy knew he was onto something extraordinary, something that defied the conventional understanding of time and space. Even more astonishing, the address listed on the report was the same location where the livery stable, mentioned in the receipt found on Fence, once stood. This connection was the final piece of the puzzle. It was as if Fence had been plucked from his time and dropped into the future, with no explanation and no way back. Could this be the same man, ripped from his time and flung into the future? The implications were staggering. If Fence could travel through time, what did that mean for the rest of us? Murphy's investigation had opened a door to a world of possibilities, a world where the past and the future were not as separate as we once thought. The ghost of 1876 had left an indelible mark on history, a mystery that would continue to intrigue and baffle for generations to come.